welcome in to the Devy Devotional Podcast, a show devoted to all things Devy and C2C. Hosted by John Arrington and Aaron Wilcox. This dynamic duo brings you actionable strategies with player-driven analysis for your Devy and C2C leagues. Let's dive in.
Let's dive into the Devy risers and fallers. Welcome into the Devy Devotional, where we stay devoted to Devy. I'm your host, Dynasty Coach A, joined as always by Aaron Wilcox at Aaron Wilcox86 on Twitter. And tonight we have a special guest. We don't do guests too often, but we have had this one on quite a few times now. We got Dirty Mike at FF_Dirty Mike on Twitter. How are you doing tonight, Mike?
Pretty good. It's my first podcast back in a month, so I spent a lot of time overseas here. So I missed a lot of football, a little upset about that. Kentucky, obviously, had that big upset win. And let me tell you what, that was the one game they didn't have on at the sports bar. So I was rooting for whatever game ended the fastest. I was like, get them out of here. NIU versus whoever they played, like 40-20. All teams had 6 timeouts with 1 minute left to go. And you best believe both teams used all their timeouts in that 1 minute. I was fuming. Like, get the cats on the screen.
Well, we're talking about risers tonight. We're going to talk about Brock Vandegrift? Huh? Maybe? No? I don't know.
No.
Hopefully he doesn't come up. No.
How are you doing, Aaron?
I'm well. We got a couple international travelers over here. John, you're gonna have to go escape Florida here and go overseas, or do something.
Now might be the time. We got a Category 5 hurricane coming our way, so maybe I need to be in Greece instead.
They call hurricanes in Europe Mediterranean hurricanes.
Oh, I did not know that.
They don't get
interesting.
They don't get that powerful.
So you don't just learn about college football here in Devy prospects. You also learn about life. But so, like I said, tonight we're going to be talking about Devy risers and fallers. We've been kind of pushing this off, saying we were going to do this pod after like week 3, and then we're like, it's probably too soon. We don't know, who's really risen, who's falling, all that kind of stuff. All right, let's do it at week 5. Oh, well, Aaron's out of the country. All right, well, let's do it in week 6. So, all right, we're finally doing it, risers and fallers, but let's make it a little fun. We're going to go ahead and do a risers and fallers draft, and then, of course, we will post it on Twitter. You guys can tell Aaron and Mike why I drafted the best teams, and then we can move forward with our lives. But being the gracious host that I am, I did give Mike the 101 for both drafts, and then Aaron's gonna have the 102. I'll have the 103, and then we're gonna snake it. So it'll go Mike, Aaron, John, Aaron, Mike, so on and so forth. We'll do that. Basically, just talking about all the players that we think have risen at least 6 spots in our own personal rankings. There might be a little difference there. Obviously, Mike ranks a little differently. Aaron ranks a little differently. So maybe there will be a players or two that we disagree about. But I think for the most part, as long as they've risen in our ranks and they are not true freshman players, those are like kind of the big no-nos that we've gone with here, and saying, hey, we want to have upperclassmen that we actually care about, that have actually moved up or moved down at least 6 spots in our ranks. That way we can find maybe some diamonds of the rough, that kind of thing. I don't think it's too difficult, although I will say it was more difficult than I thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to have a list of like 30 players, and when it was all said and done, I probably have about, 12 to 15 or something for each draft, and I'm hoping that I'm not going to get sniped over and over again, but I probably will.
You probably will. And just to throw out a couple of players that we are not going to include in this draft, so you might be expecting them to get drafted and like, whoa, no, this guy's a huge riser. Ashton Jeanty won. I mean, he's just been on a tear this year, best running back in college football. But we were all pretty high on him already coming into the season, so we're not going to include him. We're not going to include like Tet McMillan, who was a top 3-4 guy. Arch Manning, who already in a pretty uncertain QB landscape was ranked quite highly as well. So those are just a couple of top end guys that we won't be including in this draft.
Yeah, and then obviously, like I said, any of the freshmen or anything like that, I think Jeanty. I think we both had, Aaron and I at least had him as like a top 6 guy already And so, I mean, even if you moved him to 1, it still doesn't quite meet the criteria here. And so we don't want to do that. We don't want to just talk about the same players that you hear on every single podcast and everything. We want to try and get some different names. And I think we did that, but enough about that. Why don't we start off with Mike on the clock with the 101 of the Devy Risers draft?
I am just a naturally pessimistic thinker, so picking out the fallers, pretty easy for me. I am going to go with the easiest, the 101, Ollie Gordon. Ollie Gordon has to be the biggest faller.
Oh, we're switching to the faller. Okay, I thought we were doing the risers first. We're doing the fallers.
Oh, I got to do risers first? Okay, no. I'll do risers first because I know Coach A is going to hate this one.
All right, well, you have the 101 and the fallers, so I'll just go ahead and put Ollie Gordon there too.
We'll get back to that one.
We'll tease for us. Okay, I like it.
Yeah, there you go.
I think Garrett Nussmeier looks like a first-round QB. We kind of thought that he was we've always heard about these BS quarterback battles. You know, Luke Altmaier's pushing so and so, and Hudson Card's pushing so and so, and they go over and they're terrible. I actually do believe Garrett Nussmeier was pushing Jaden Daniels for the starting spot over the last couple of years. They gave him an NIL package to keep him in-house, so he stayed there, sat behind Daniels for a while, and now he's a really good thrower. I think he's dealing out there. He's looking like an NFL-level pocket passer. Now, I do always harp on level of competition, and I will say he really hasn't played anyone this year. So we still got to wait. In-conference play is coming up, so we'll find out the true colors. But he's averaging 350, I think, a game for passing yards with only 2 picks. I'm pretty excited about him. I think this class I thought had real potential to be a Kenny Pickett quarterback class. So I'm really kind of pumped about Garrett Nussmeier kind of rising up to this group.
Yeah, I'm with you on the whole he has not actually played anyone yet thing.
Yeah.
I mean, his best game was against Nichols, because everyone knows who Nichols is. And then, they played one legit team in South Carolina, I think it was, and his
South
numbers
Carolina,
were
the new USC. They're not
his
South Carolina's
numbers were
USC is, who knows.
pretty bad. And I mean, just comparing Nussmeier to Jaden Daniels, I mean, the numbers are substantially lower in every single piece. So I mean, I could very well be wrong because I've always been a Nussmeier hater. I could very well be wrong when it's all said and done. Yeah. I'm not ready to make any kind of determination that I'm wrong yet because, like you said, he just hasn't played enough. I need to see a lot more out of him.
Yeah, and it's a fair pick for sure, just because, I mean, yes, there was uncertainty whether he was going to do much this year, if he was just purely a projection. I know there was some hype out there, but certainly he's done some things that at least are getting him the attention that you want to see as a prospect. So I could definitely see that. So with Mike taking him at 101 here, that'll leave some interesting options for me on the board here as far as risers go. So again, we established we can't do an Ashton Jeanty. So obviously that would have been my pick here if he was in this pool. So we have to go a little bit deeper here. I'm going to go Jalen Milroe, Alabama quarterback. Okay, so Jalen Milroe, definitely a guy coming into the season. There's a lot of people torn on him, and he was not necessarily a top guy. And I had him in that 8 to 12 type of range. But now for me, he's like a top 3 type of guy in college football right now. And I understand this is coming off of this Vanderbilt loss where that doesn't feel quite as good as it did a week ago, because Vanderbilt they handled business. They had a great coaching game plan against Alabama. And I'm not going to go into every detail of the game, but Milroe didn't look perfect, and he isn't the perfect passer. He really is not. But if you want a guy like a Jalen Hurts who has his warts coming out, but he has just this great athletic upside, great arm talent, ability to play within or outside of some structure, he's going to have their inconsistent moments, but if he lands in the right system, Jalen Milroe could be a home run hit, and his athleticism and arm talent is awesome. So he's taken a huge step forward this season, statistically and otherwise. And yeah, he's got Alabama having a great season before this last week, at least. So Jalen Milroe, quarterback out of Alabama, is my 102 here.
Yeah, this is the only part where that's going to be a little tough, just because Milrow didn't meet the criteria for me. I already had him at QB 8 going into the season, and I have him at QB 3 now. So he technically has not moved up 6 spots for me, but he has risen. So I don't mind the pick at all, and that's more that's just my own rankings and everything. But I don't mind it. Although I will say it's kind of tough with the game that he just had. I mean, it was just a night and day difference.
Yeah, it was the usual Milrow, yeah. But I'm here with Aaron though, because I was a big Milrow doubter. I was kind of like Nick Saban couldn't figure him out. Like I believe Kalen DeBoer can help figure him out, and he looked. I mean, the Georgia game, he looked like a first round like 101 QB, and I think like the Vanderbilt game was like, all right, that's a Jalen Milrow I expected out of him. But like you said, all the tools are still there. If he goes to the right system in the NFL, like we'll feel good. If he goes to like whatever those coaches are that like to do like, oh man, I can't think of the offensive coordinator for like the Colts, but like that guy came over from the Eagles. He's worked with Jalen Hurts and then got Anthony Richardson. We're like, yeah, we can believe in him. He gets Anthony Richardson. So that type of coaching scheme, but I'm with him.
I feel like right now Jalen Milrow, as is a slightly better version of Anthony Richardson, like just slightly. And I like feel like he's a little bit better of a passer, but very similar. Like the big arm can make the big throws. Just a little bit better of a passer, but similar athleticism and everything. The difference is Jalen Milrow actually runs, and that you have people like freaking out about, oh, Anthony Richardson's not running in the NFL. I'm like, he didn't run in college. Why did you think he was going to run in the NFL? So I feel like Jalen Milrow actually does run. So I really don't mind. And like I just said, he's my QB3 overall. So I mean, I like the pick. I definitely think he is a good riser here. I'm gonna go with a running back here at 103. I thought I was gonna go QB. Actually, I have 2 picks, so I guess I can go both of them here. But I'm gonna start with the running back who has just blown the doors off of college football this year, Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. I cannot believe what he's doing. It's just one of the biggest turnarounds for. Well, I don't want to. I was going to name a person who's fallen in the complete opposite direction, but I don't want to ruin the Fowler's draft, so I'm not going to name any names. But there's a player that's doing the complete opposite right now. But Caleb Johnson has 771 rushing yards, 7.9 yards a clip, 10 tutties already. Not too much in the receiving game, but just the big playability, everything about what Caleb Johnson is doing right now, like looks really, really sustainable and viable for the NFL, which we would have not had said, last year. I don't think there's, you could probably go through 100 different rankers, analysts, whatever you want to call it. I don't think there's a single person that would have had Caleb Johnson in their top 10 of running backs going into the season. And I would say it's the complete opposite now, where there's not a single person that doesn't have Caleb Johnson in their top 10. If they're not, I don't know what they're looking at, because I don't even think he had like an amazing game this past week. I think he had like 80 yards or something like that, but like that's his down game, So almost 800 yards in 6 games, 11.8% big time run rate, 1.41 PPR points per touch. Like I said, the receiving game leaves something to be desired. So he's not a perfect prospect by any means, but just, you want to talk about a riser. I think Caleb Johnson meets that requirement, don't you?
Yeah, no. Sorry, you go ahead. Yeah, I like that pick. I didn't have him ranked until like 2 weeks ago, so I gave up on him.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy where it's just been a roller coaster with him. So I drafted him in a league actually as a freshman. Kind of intriguing. Solid enough season for Iowa, and then last year he just face planted, put him on the trade block right in the CSC league. No crickets. Nobody wanted him. Nobody would give anything, any pick. So I had to cut him. I was like, I just have to. And then look at what he's doing this year. So just a guy who everybody started to give up on. Even the Iowa coaching staff didn't announce him as starter. They're like, no, he's like 3rd string to start the season. And it's like, well, or he was like tied. It was one of those or things, right? And it's like, this guy, he's been so dominant, so impressive this season. I do like the pick absolutely at this slot. It's just kind of a crazy unfolding on how his career has just been yo-yoing up and down. So hopefully he's here to stay. I'm not concerned about this last week because that was against Ohio State. And I mean, you're Iowa. It's just, they're just not going to be able to put up much of a fight. He still averaged 5.7 yards per carry against Ohio State and a touchdown. It's not bad.
I think he got bailed out by a late run for 28 yards, but Yeah, I think Ohio State has like a top 5 defense. Like, like it's can't ask
Yeah.
for more.
All right, so I was not paying attention to the chat at all. We have quite a few comments here, including our very best friend of the show, Felix Sharp, saying, "Turn your damn mic on, Mike." Unfortunately, Mike was having some issues pre-show. This was not from lack of turning it on or for forgetting to turn it on. He just could not get it to work. So if he is difficult to understand or anything like that, we do apologize. He did try. This is not necessarily his fault. Although, it seemed to be working fine before he went on vacation for like 5 weeks. So, who really knows? We also have Brad Bolt in the chat. Happy birthday, Brad. He says, "Hey fellas, how are you doing? Everyone wish Brad a happy birthday." Toronto Dave in the chat. "In Beth we trust." Obviously, as I win this draft, everyone will understand it's in Beth we trust. Felix, turn your mic on. Felix saying, "Don't let Mike make another pick until he's turned his mic on." He's very upset about you not having your mic on right now. Herm says, "Say nice things about Roman Hemby or I'm leaving." Herms, I love you, buddy, but I don't think we can say nice things about Roman Hemby. He might be in the Fallers one. Who knows? And then Hollywood's in here. Yo, yo, yo. Biggest riser, Jeremiah Smith. Heard of him? Yeah, I think I've heard of that guy, but unfortunately he doesn't quite work for this one. And Hollywood says Johnson is a tough as hell runner, perfect for the Iowa scheme. So I'm caught up on those comments, but keep them coming. We love them. Obviously, make sure you're liking and subscribing, doing all that kind of stuff as well. I have another pick here, though. I don't think that I have to make this pick. But I like making my picks. I like making my stands and everything. So I'm going to make this pick, even though I don't think I have to. I'm going to pick Eli Holstein out of Pitt. I think that he has essentially come from nowhere. I don't know why Alabama ever let him leave. I get obviously like in the days of NIL and everything that like crazy stuff happens, but seeing what we're seeing Eli Holstein do right now at Pitt, imagine if Jalen Milroe goes off to the NFL next year and then they have Eli Holstein at Bama. Like I don't know how you ever let that leave. This is not a player that I even cared about or knew necessarily about before the season or anything like that. I definitely did not have him ranked. In fact, I was the complete opposite. I was a big Nate Yarnell fan, saying that Yarnell was going to be a stud and this and that. I guess I can't be mad because Eli Holstein's really good. So like Yarnell got beat out, but he got beat out by a good player. Everything about his numbers, once again, like looks really sustainable. Over 10.4 intended air yards per attempt, 0.9 PPR points per touch, 1.8% interception rate. So he's safe with the ball while pushing it down the field. But at 8.4 yards per carry, like the dude runs, like he can actually get out of the pocket and make it work and everything. I am not saying he's like a true stud. I'm not saying he's the QB1 or anything like that, but he has risen substantially in my ranks from obviously not ranked at all to top 10 in my ranks. So I don't know how you guys feel about him, but I don't know how you could really have him in this kind of ambiguous QB situation that the college football is right now. I can't really say how you could have him outside of your like top 10, top 12, something around there.
I mean, I do have him within my top 20 now. So, I mean, that is a huge rise from being unranked. So that's absolutely qualifies as a big riser here. Maybe one of the biggest leaps that anybody will make today on the show. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, he certainly deserves the top 20 mark. I guess you said top 10 or 12. I mean, that could be a little bit rich depending on how much you're holding on to some of these other guys who have done some really promising things. Like if you still believe in Carson Beck or Shadur Sanders or Drew Alar or I guess Wigman, those are guys that I don't blame people for still having ahead. But at the same time, if you're pretty quick to react and maybe you have objective process that say, well, this guy is simply just more productive. Eli Holstein can slot in there for sure as a top type of 12 guy. So I think I have him actually at QB 14. So I'm not far off of there right now, actually, but it's not quite there. But I mean, for this draft, very good pick there. I think I would have taken him before you picked next. So yeah.
Ooh, okay.
I got him
Well,
at
I
15
guess I
myself.
played the game right because I thought you guys weren't really going to have him. Well, not that he wouldn't be on your radar, but I kind of thought he might slip your mind for at least the first part of the draft.
Yeah, I think like
I'm
108.
generally down on the quarterback class for Devy overall. I'm talking about like I really care about like the top 12. That's about it. Like everyone else outside, I'm like maybe, but whatever. But I put a Holstein at 15 myself. I'm with Aaron. Like the production is there, and like we look at like the Pitt schedule, like they haven't played anybody. They're not going to play anybody until they play Clemson. But like it's fine. It's his first year starting. He's young. Has some stats. That's okay. See what he really looks like next year. Like so that's fine. Like putting him at like QB 15. That's like you're established on the radar. I'm going to be watching you closely for like the next year and a half.
Yeah, and he's really impressed as far as the mobility goes and everything, but he has very much benefited from an offense that's running a ton of plays, ton of opportunities to pick up yards, etc., and a dynamic running back there in Reed. Is it Desmond Reed? Just undersized guy, but just jitterbug. I mean, every time he's such a weapon in the passing game. He's unreal as far as what that does for a quarterback. So he can, whether it's dump it off or throw it down the field, it doesn't have to be a low A-dot pass. Reed is definitely making Holstein look even better, but you can't take that away and say, well, he's trash without Reed. Like he's been good with all his other receivers too. He's elevating the offense. So it certainly needs some attention there.
He needs to learn to put more touch on those short balls though. I think he just fires it. Like his deep ball's fine, but I'm talking about like he just fires as a cannon on a short ball throw. So like I don't know. And talking about Milrow earlier too, like these quarterbacks that have the long ball figured out, I like that type of prototype a lot more going to the pros than a guy that's the opposite where they can only throw the short ball and can't throw the deep. Like think about like Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert's deep ball was like beautiful. And like seeing that, I was like, I'm sure he'll figure out the short throw. Like if you can do that in the NFL.
Yeah, and Holstein's not a perfect prospect by any means. Like I said, he has room to grow, but he's a true sophomore. He has plenty of time to do it. So and he's in a tier where he could easily. I really wouldn't argue with you with probably like 5 or 6 guys right now if you wanted to say this guy's over that guy. So I really don't care where you have him, but I mean I think you guys are all moving in the right direction already. I feel like even if he's like, oh, he's at 14, but he could probably be at like 10 if we really nitpicked or whatever, that kind of thing. All right, Aaron, you're up for 105. We got Garrett Nussmeier, Jalen Milrow, Caleb Johnson, and Eli Holstein so far. Who you taking?
This one might hurt a little bit, but I am going to take Trey Harris, wide receiver, Ole Miss. Trey Harris is just, I mean, he was a guy, we both liked him, but no, he was not a top like 5 type of guy. He was definitely for consensus too. He was off the radar. Like I think a lot of folks have him in that 30-40 range. I don't know if most of those ranks probably haven't really been updated to the true rise that we should be crediting Trey Harris with, I guess. So he's now a top 10 type of guy in college football amongst wide receivers. His production, I mean, you can't argue with it. And admittedly against some lower end teams for the most part, but he's still looked really good against Kentucky, against South Carolina, even though he left the game a little bit early this last week with some sort of lower extremity injury. Hopefully that doesn't slow him down, but he has been dominant. Antoine Wells, who everybody's been, or I shouldn't say everybody, but there's been hype for Antoine Wells as a legitimate prospect. Trey Harris is just, he's way out producing him, and he's efficient. He's explosive down the field. Better route runner than Antoine Wells ever hopes to be. And Trey Harris has the size, 6'3", 210. He did it last year. He just was a little bit banged up there down the stretch, so he didn't end up necessarily putting up quite as elite of a season as we would have liked, but it was still very good. And I get he was one of these guys who started at a smaller school and then transferred up to the SEC, but now he's dominating 2 years worth of data. Now at a higher level of competition, he's still producing. So Trey Harris, he's got to be the pick here. At least I'm happy with landing him here. Is at 106. Yeah, I'll take that for 105.
Yeah, I love the pick there. I mean, we saw it last year, and he's almost taken a step forward from that. The concerns with Antoine Wells or anyone else have really been nothing to worry about. And honestly, they've been going up against some like tough teams the past couple weeks, and he still just looks like the whole offense, like it's him and Jackson Dart and that's it. And so I I love the pick there. It works out perfectly with one of my followers that I can't wait to get into a little bit later. But yeah, I love the pick there. Mike, what do you have? You got 2 in a row here.
This is gonna be tough. I'm gonna stay on theme with wide receivers though, and I've been moving up Xavier Restrepo, wide receiver from Miami, another 5th-year guy. Been a really big top producer. I started watching him closely when I was originally a Colby Young fan, and I had to like go watch Restrepo, and I had to lie to myself and be like, yeah, Colby Young can beat this. He can outproduce this. But anyway, Restrepo's in a tier of players in last year's film play for me, the tier of like Lad McConkey, Roman Wilson, and I'm missing another guy, but another one like these like smaller at the time before like the draft, like considered slot only players that were super reliable and robust. And I put Restrepo in that tier. So having him come back to college out of the 3 guys, I can't remember the last name, but I was pretty excited. Like man, like he's gonna be like a 100-yard receiver every single week. He's just a like efficient mover with this like stout, thick build. He's like NFL tough, and I think he can be a really productive slot at the next level. So I've been moving him up. I keep track of my movement like every 2 months on my sheet. So in January I had him wide receiver 49. I have him now at 25.
Oh wow, that's a big movement.
Yeah.
I know. Well, actually, you know what? I don't want to talk about that because I think I have a follower connected to that guy too. So I don't want to go too crazy with it, but I will say, he has definitely risen my ranks. And not quite as much as he has for you. I think, a lot of it has to do with it's a 5th-year wide receiver. Like I always get scared of that. At least with Trey Harris, we can say he's doing it at an SEC school. He's just absolutely dominating. I don't know that we can say Restrepo's absolutely dominating anyone, but he's definitely putting up some good, solid numbers and has risen my ranks as well.
I think Restrepo's play style is more translatable than Trey Harris. I just don't like Trey Harris' route tree. I think he's going to be one of those excellent college producers, goes to the pros. He's just very meh, or even like a practice squad or a rotational piece. I don't think I'm expecting much out of Trey Harris as a pro, but I think Restrepo, if it's like a system thing, he can be like very reliable, like blank in a short area. But NFL slots are hit or miss, depends on the quarterback. But I think that's like I believe in Restrepo far more than I believe in Trey Harris. I really just don't like his route tree.
Yeah, and
Oh yeah,
I've never
even
been a Restrepo guy. I mean, that's just me. He has taken that step forward this year as far as becoming more dynamic with the ball, or at least just getting downfield a little bit more easily. And I think that's a reflection of that offense, though. Cam Ward being able to air it out. There's all these other weapons there. There's 4 guys who have 20 plus receptions on that team. Xavier Restrepo has 32, so he's hardly leading the team in receptions that themselves. So I mean, he is one of those guys where I don't mind him as a riser. So that's what this draft's all about, right? But I don't necessarily see the translating traits there as much, unless, like you said, he falls into that right system. Like, I mean, he could land in LA and be a Sean McVay and Matt Stafford type of slot wide receiver, I suppose, right? I mean, Cooper Kupp. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know that he's quite at that level either. So at the end of the day, I think that Trey Harris, I know what you're saying with him. I actually think that there's some Jahan Dotson in there. And you saw how that turned out. Like, guy who had a promising profile, wasn't he a first round pick? Like, very high end draft capital, at least into the
yeah,
NFL.
like
And
16th
Jahan
overall
Dotson,
or something.
yeah. I mean, Jahan Dotson just didn't quite put it together. I think that there's some shades of that with Trey Harris, but at the end of the day, I mean, you want solid prospects and who get solid draft capital, all those things. So we'll see with Restrepo. I mean, he's certainly on a team that's it's 6-0 team, Miami. He's gonna get some national attention. You kind of, even though they probably shouldn't be after that last game, right? But it's one of those deals where they're gonna get a lot of attention as contenders. Restrepo is gonna be definitely getting a lot of scouts coming to watch him play, all those things.
Yeah, I agree. Mike, you got another pick at 107.
Yeah, that's what I forgot. Another riser. Okay, bear with me here. Malachi Fields, Virginia wide receiver.
That was the next guy on my list.
Oh, was he? I've been hiding him for years. I've been following him since his true freshman season. I've been in his corner the whole time, and like I'll tell you what, if he didn't have a good year, I wasn't going to mention his name. I would probably like, oh, Mike, weren't you the Malachi Fields guy? I would have just been quiet. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. But anyway, Malachi Fields was he was a part of. Do you remember the receiving core there, the true freshman? It was
It's
Dontavian
like
Wicks was there.
Wicks. Yeah. It was some intriguing guys there for sure.
It was a trio of guys getting NFL buzz, and he still got on the field as a true freshman. Then his second year, he broke his leg, and then came back for one game, and then they had that tragedy. Anyway, it's just been like a series of unfortunate events. So seeing him be healthy, taking that one role, I was really worried about last year's Malik Washington transferring. Malik Washington was just a short area yak guy, and it seemed to just feed him the ball. And I'm like, well, what's that say about Malachi Fields' skill set if he can't, the established veteran on the team can't get touches, they want to go to manufactured touch guys. So I was a little bit worried about going into this season, but I think he looks great. Malachi Fields, I think, has some of the best hands, some of the, like just the best attacks the ball with his hands. He's just good at the catch point. He's a phenomenal athlete. He's on the Bruce Jones freak list. The route tree, like, I don't know. Guys are like 6'4". I don't really ask for the route tree to like be like super advanced. So this is more of a like traditional X. I'm hoping for him to translate into at the next level. I will say this though, watching him play this last weekend, I did laugh when the commentators, the ACC network commentator was like, "I'm telling you, Mac, this guy's the next DK Metcalf." I was like, all right, I don't know about that, but
Oh man.
Yeah, he's way too slow to be like a DK Metcalf comp.
Yeah.
But he's got everything else. That's always been the question with him. Does he have enough burst, long speed? And his yards per reception has always been solid, but that's sometimes how those big wide receivers win, is down the field. But can they do it at the NFL level? Athleticism has to translate to a degree. But that's a good call out, because he's been stepping up this year. No more Malik Washington there, so definitely kind of a target hog.
Yeah, going back to Restrepo, it's kind of the opposite, where you were saying like Restrepo has 32 receptions. I think the next best player has 31. Malachi Fields has 28. The next best player has 13 as far as receptions, and he has double the yardage, and he has 412 receiving yards on a team that's only passed for 1,200 passing yards. So I love Fields. He was my next player that I was going to be talking about. I don't even know that he's actually risen that much, because I already had him pretty high, but I know that no one else had him ranked, so I didn't even care. I was gonna pick him as one of my risers anyway. But I think that I honestly feel like he's only risen like 5 spots for me or something like that. But I didn't actually go back and count it. I was like, screw it, I'm choosing him. I don't care.
Where do you have Matt, John?
I have Fields at wide receiver 13. Overall,
wow.
not in the class.
Yeah, overall, you're a huge believer. You're in.
Yeah, I said I'm a pretty big fan. I mean, everything that I get. Maybe you guys are a little worried about the athleticism. I mean, honestly, that's not going to necessarily show up here. I do look at ADOT and yards per reception, things like that, to look at that. Is he only getting little dinks and dunks, or is he getting the bigger plays? And he seems to hit all of those thresholds for that kind of stuff. But then you look at the yards per team pass attempt, 3.05. The yards per game is up there. The market share 32.7% this year. PPR points per touch 3.36% or 3.36. Like, everything about it says that he can do it. It's just going to be a matter of actually getting into the NFL and doing all that. Now, I can say, obviously, Malik Washington also looked good in this offense, and then he was like a 6th-round pick or something like that. So, I might be too high on him, but I think that Fields is better. I don't know.
Well, I'm with you. I'm not 13 overall with you. I'm more like 29 overall. I'll probably get talked to like earlier 20s, but I'm on team Malachi Fields.
I will admit it's probably just this year and how Devy is right now, but I have a giant tier from probably like wide receiver 10 to wide receiver, I don't even 30, something like that. So, I mean, I do have him at 13 overall, and I'm fine saying that. But I mean, honestly, you could make an argument for 28th overall being just as good, or possibly even better. Like, I have Carnell Tate at 28th overall. Like, I could move Carnell Tate ahead of Malachi Fields. but Cardinal Tate hasn't done a damn thing in college. It's just it's really tough to say like who's going to do what and is he going to get washed out or whatever. But we've seen some good things from Tate, so it's just a giant tier, really.
It's just because the 26 class just feels gross right now. If you look at it, you're like, who's like the top 5 for 2026? And it's like hard.
It really is.
It's hard.
It's gross for like everything. QB. And the crazy part is that people were saying how amazing that class was. We had 5 stud QBs, we had all these amazing wide receivers, and now it's like, do we have anything? Like we don't have a single running back that matters for 26. We have like maybe 1 or 2 wide receivers that matter, and then we have like Arch Manning. Yay!
Yeah, that's fair. It's definitely a class that's lacking. I can go ahead here at the 108, unless do we have a Herm's question here in the comments?
When speaking of 2026 class and 27 and so on and so forth, when is QB supposed to be good again? Asking for me and my struggling dynasty rosters.
Boy.
I will answer this one in saying I think there's going to be diamonds in the rough, that people aren't going to care about. Like you're going to have your Jackson Darts, you're going to have players like that get pushed down because Ole Miss and this and that and whatever else that you can get later on in rookie drafts that would normally be with like they did what they are doing in college would probably normally be considered like the 101 or 102 or something around there. But just for whatever reason, people haven't fallen in love with these players, and so they're going to get pushed down, and you can get those kind of players and take advantage of that, a la a Brock Purdy or something like that. Something. I'm not even saying like the same situation whatsoever. I'm just saying like you get those kind of players late, and then all of a sudden you have a stud. It's not necessarily going to be I have the 101, so I'm taking the best quarterback and that kind of thing, because I don't know if we'll have that besides Arch Manning. I don't know if we'll really have that for a couple of years until we get back to I have the 101, I have the 102, I have the 103, so I'm taking QB.
Yeah.
Got to wait till 2026. Start tanking now for Arch. Yep.
Yeah, just make sure it's actually 101, because you don't want to have 102. No.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's rough right now, but we know how these guys emerge. I mean, 1.5 years out, still be some really, really good guys. But okay, we'll get back to the Risers draft 108 after Mike just selected Malachi Fields. I'm not going to lie. I struggled a little bit with this one. Like, who do I want to select here? I'm going to go with a guy I normally wouldn't talk much about, but I think that he deserves some recognition here, because I don't like to come across as a homer. I'm really not a homer when we discuss these types of prospects and these types of things. But Darius Taylor, I think he has risen enough for me. And it's not even like he's risen quite within the top 10, but just amongst running backs right now in college. You asked who could be really good in that 2026 class. Darius Taylor is showing this year that he's actually this unreal receiving threat. Now, I'm not saying that he's not like Ashton Gianti out there. He doesn't have quite that level of juice. So let's not even, start throwing crazy comps out there. I just think that Darius Taylor, he's done enough within an offense that's very one-dimensional. Like they could throw it a little bit, but they're not going to be throwing a whole lot. Minnesota struggles to really move the ball other than with that running game. And Darius Taylor is the most reliable guy there. He's bursty. He's powerful. He has enough size. He's showing that receiving ability this year. I think he's enough of a riser where I'm going to select him here, be a little bit of a homer, because it's fun to be that every once in a while. But actually, he's proving to me that he is somewhat of a legitimate Devy asset versus before we were questioning, was it just, some freshman luck and, is he going to stay healthy and those things? Well, he came out this season and he's proven that he can stay healthy thus far. So Darius Taylor is my pick.
What do you think of him as an athlete?
As an athlete is a question?
Yeah, as an athlete.
Yeah, and the only reason I actually even brought up Ashton Gianti is because those were the questions. That's what everybody was saying about Gianti before this season. That's why he wasn't a top 5 back for some folks out there. Was because it was like, the athleticism. He's not really great, but in between the tackles, he's not really the fastest, burstiest guy out there. Well, Gianti's put all that to rest, and I think that Darius Taylor, he's just fine between the tackles. He's good there, but I think his burst and his agility on all those things are underrated. His top end speed, I think right now is lacking, but if he can just get just slightly faster with that, I really do think that he's legit Devy weapon. And, this year's running back class, pretty darn deep. That's awesome. And some guys might return to school, but I just see him as being a very promising guy who's in that 2026 class.
Yeah, and the big time run rate has really always looked good for him, and I get that. I mean, it's not as high as some of the players like Ashton Genty's at 13% this year, or the past 2 years combined. Darius Taylor's not quite there yet, or not quite there, but that's not necessarily Minnesota's game. They just kind of run it down your throats. They don't really like necessarily go for the big play over and over again, like that kind of thing. And they're playing tougher defenses there, and in the Big Ten, and having to go up against these teams that are built for these running teams that just want to run it down your throat and things like that. So Taylor's always been pretty high since he basically took over last year. He's been pretty high for me. I don't even know that he necessarily meets my criteria for a riser, because I think I had him high enough, but I will accept it because I think it's a good call, and I don't think he gets enough love. In fact, I want to say I was looking at campstocanton.com's rankings, and I think they're still pretty damn low on him. Like maybe like I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I want to say they were like in the 20s or something like that for him. And that seems a little low.
Could be. And I mean, I'll just say one more thing. He wishes, or I'm sure the people who roster him in a C2C leagues wish that Darius Taylor played on a G5 or Mountain West team, because I mean, he'd be putting up some crazy stats then. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I almost thought about actually him with one of the picks too. I only moved him up 6, so he hit the threshold for me, but I was like, I don't know. I feel like that's just cheesing it. I should probably go somewhere else.
Yeah, it's tough with these. I mean, that's the thing. Unless we actually put out a pool of players, but then you might be leading the witness or something like that. Reminding people of other players and stuff. So we always, Aaron and I, one thing with Devy Devotional, we've always kind of just been like, hey, like let's surprise each other when we talk about this. So it's like it's a realistic response and not just, oh, we talked about this for 2 hours before we jumped on the pod and that kind of thing. And that's why sometimes when I open my mouth, Aaron's like, wait, what just happened? So it just comes off the cuff, and hey, I like the pick. I was looking real quick to see. I did not want to speak ill of campstocanton.com, and so I wanted to actually see where they had him, and it is lower than I thought. No, 15. So not as low. It's not 20. So they have him at 15. That's not terrible. I still think it should probably be a little higher though. But
yeah, 12.
That brings nice. Yeah, I think he should be top 12 at the very least for everyone, because and honestly I think it goes along with. We'll talk about probably some fallers in the running, in the running backs or in the faller draft. We'll talk about some of these running backs that are just not quite doing what we think, and maybe people are kind of slow to be like, hey, this guy's actually not what we expected, and so on and so forth. So that brings me up for 2 picks, and you know what? I don't think if you came back from the future and said, I'm going to tell you who you're going to talk about on this pod, I would have just said, no, you're straight up lying. Like, you're absolutely insane. But over the past couple of weeks, there's been a player that's been standing out in Devy Beth, and I'm just like, you know what? I guess I just have to talk about him now. And it's Kyle McCord. I think, yeah. I know, it sounds crazy. But Kyle McCord is doing things at Syracuse that I never expected to happen. He is just hitting such different levels of quarterbacking at Syracuse than he ever could have possibly done at Ohio State when he was throwing it to Emeka Egbuka and Marvin Harrison Jr. On top of Trevion Henderson and everyone else. I know that Matt Bruning from campstocanton.com is a huge Kyle McCord fan, and I know he has said that he felt like Ohio State was kind of holding McCord back from his gunslinger ways and things of that nature, and so maybe that's why he's doing better. But I don't know what you can say or I don't know how you can say that he's not at least on your radar now as a Devy viable QB. I'm not saying you have to have him top 5 or anything like that, but like he has to be on your radar and he has to have moved up, because I want to say I had him in like the QB 30 range or something like that, and he has moved up substantially for me. I mean, he on the year he has almost 2,000 yards, 17 touchdowns. He does have 6 interceptions, but compared to 17 touchdowns, that's not terrible. I can deal with that, and I don't know. Like I said, he's putting up big plays. They're winning big games. Like I said, I feel like he has to at least be on radars, and he has absolutely risen up my ranks. You guys think I'm crazy, or are you there with me?
He has risen up for sure. I love Matt Bruni. If Matt Bruni ever goes 1 week without talking about Kyle McCord, I know he's not doing okay and got to check up on him. I decided to see if I thought that was legit or not when I watched the UNLV game Friday, and I thought it was a lot of like real dink and dunk offense type stuff, and so I kind of lost interest in there. But like me and Corey always talk about, these quarterbacks who just run a scheme well and they execute to perfection. Like those guys have a place in the NFL. If it's not like it's a long-term backup or even like a bridge quarterback. And sometimes you get the Brock Purdy's who just fit the scheme so well they become the starter. So I think Kyle McCord is definitely a riser. So 100% definitely agree with that. I'm on board with him being a day 3 guy. Like I really am. I think he'll be Senior Bowl or even. I'm on board. I think he's a riser. I don't know. I don't think the ceiling is very high, but I'm on board. But I really was expecting a little bit more than what I saw against UNLV.
That's fair. I mean, and like I said, it's not perfect, and I don't have him top 12 or anything like that, but I just think he went from completely off my radar altogether to like, hey, he keeps showing up in Beth, and I'm like, wait, I got to talk about him at some point.
This is my movement. 45, hit the transfer portal. 52, committed to Syracuse. 55, and then like a week ago, I moved him up to 19.
That's a pretty big jump.
So he's been a roller coaster for me.
I mean, there's a lot of players that have fallen as well in the QBs. That's not surprising that he's moved up to 19, because half of that might have just been players falling, honestly.
Yeah.
What do you think, Aaron?
No, I mean, it's just kind of a surprising guy to rise up this season. Just somebody nobody thought. I mean, you and I in our conversations right before the season started, we're like, nah, I don't think Kyle McCord's gonna be Devy viable, but here he is. And I think that there's a chance. I would say that, I am more like day 2, day 3 type of guy, but those guys still can hit. We've seen it happen. There's quite a few guys in the NFL today, still even as starters, who were drafted on day 3. Kirk Cousins. I mean, not Russell Wilson right now, but Russell Wilson for years. Prescott. You go down Brock Purdy, go down the list. There's actually quite a few guys who are not. You don't have to be a day 1 pick to be good. In fact, so many day 1 guys are reaches who are just this prototypical, rocket arm guy who don't work. I'm not trying to call out like a Will Levis or somebody like that, but I kind of am. Anyways, no, I think that there's certainly some hope for McCord. It's just, it's hard to buy in, but if he keeps this up, you kind of have to keep moving him up.
I agree. All right. I think it's time, because this is my last pick, because we're only doing 1 round. Honestly, if you don't think it's difficult to find like an actual risers list, go through your own ranks if you make your own ranks or whatever, and take away freshmen. That's going to make it a little more difficult, and then make sure that they've risen at least 6 spots, and then go make a list. You cannot come up with as many as you actually might think that you could, because I was able to come. I think I came up with about 18 when it was all said and done, but not necessarily enough to do a 2-round draft. So I think we'll stick with 1, but I think I'm going to go with one of my favorite touts when we first started the Devy Devotional. Completely fell off the face of the planet. I was like, all right, I'm done. I'm finally done. Ja'Cory Brooks goes over to Louisville, and next thing you know, he is like the best wide receiver in all of college. I will never forgive Alabama. I will never forgive everyone. I loved Ja'Cory Brooks. He was like, I was his biggest fan. And then I was finally like, I just can't be hurt again. And I finally gave up. And here he is just putting up ridiculous numbers. I think, didn't he have like 100 and something yards and 2 touchdowns this week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds
Yeah.
right.
I mean, he just like putting up huge numbers, almost 500 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns so far in 5 games, just dominating at Louisville. And I don't know how did Alabama screw this up that badly? Like, I just don't get it.
What do you mean? He doesn't fit Nick Saban. Nick Saban likes these small, shifty, speed route runners. That's none of Ja'Cory Brooks' game. But he fits what Jeff Brom likes.
Yeah, I mean, Jacory's been great this season. I mean, I just traded for him 2 weeks ago, and I couldn't be happier. Or maybe it was 1 week ago before this last game. I needed a wide receiver and whatever.
I think it was like the day before the
like,
game or something like that.
It was like late
it
last
was very
week.
soon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very recently. I mean.
No, but I mean, I love that call. He was actually on my list. I don't know if he's my next guy, but definitely considering him here. A big riser. I still had him in my Devy ranks. I will say that. But he was pretty buried in there, right? He was low. So
I don't think if he was in my top 100, he was at like 99. Like,
he was at
low.
like 7. He was at like 70 for me. So I still was like clinging on somehow, but it was just kind of one of those things where I'm not going to rank some little like G5 guy ahead of him. I'll keep holding out hope until there's none, and now there's hope. So I'd love to see that for Ja'Cory.
Yeah, probably. I mean, actually, both of those picks, Kyle McCord and Ja'Cory Brooks, like I would never have expected those were the names coming out of my mouth during this podcast. And actually, I do have quite a few, so maybe we'll do some honorable mentions after we finish this out. But we got Aaron with 111.
Okay, at 111, I'll pick a guy here who never gets any publicity on the Devy Devotional, and it's because he's a riser. I mean, he's a guy who is unranked for me, unranked for probably vast majority of people before this season, and that's Ty Felton, Maryland wide receiver. Just a guy who's been kind of dominating this year, just quietly, right? Maryland doesn't get a lot of credits, and they've had good quarterback play and everything, but he's just been dominant this year. And he had a sneakily solid year last year. And I know it wasn't the best quarterback play, the best atmosphere, this or that, but Felton was solid. And then now this year, he has 46 receptions in 5 games. The next closest guy is 26, Caden Prather. Shout out, Caden. He was kind of a Devy darling at one point, but no, he's taking the reins there. It's like the next guy after that is Roman Hemby. So we do have a Roman Hemby shout out. Of course, Herms. I had to get that in there. But Hemby's got 14. So that's not exactly, stellar numbers. Like Felton is just carrying that offense. I like what I'm seeing out of him. I've watched his film, and I can't say that I think he's like a top 5 type of talent in this draft class by any means, but I actually think that he does some similar-ish things to he's like a smaller Malachi Fields, and I think that's to his advantage, where he's a little bit quicker, a little bit faster in some ways too. Again, they're not really the same type of player, but Ty Felton, definitely impressive guy, riser for me, and went from being unranked to now he's in my top 20. So he's getting up there.
So I had Ty Felton and Ja'Cory Brooks back to back, and so I had to make a decision there because I only had one pick. Did you? Oh, nice. So I decided to go with Brooks just because I feel like, when pandering to the public here, when we put out this poll that Ja'Cory Brooks is going to be a sexier name right now than Felton, but I honestly have Felton one spot ahead. So I kind of like your pick better, but I went with the sentimentality, if that's even a word, of Ja'Cory Brooks. But I like them both. And you mentioned Malachi Fields. Honestly, like I have them like back to back to back. So yeah, they're all extremely close for me. And I like I said, it's kind of a big tier. I really wouldn't mind any argument for any of them over the other one or whatever.
I like it. That's a good one. I have the last pick. Is that right?
That's it. You got 112, baby.
Wrapping it up. I am not pandering to Coach A with this pick. I truly do feel this way. I know he's going to feel great about this. I have moved Dylan Sampson up to RB20.
Let's go.
Yeah, I have. I think Dylan Sampson's probably the best. Yeah, okay, but he's gonna hate my reasoning. I think Dylan Sampson's the best change of pace running back probably coming out this year in this class. So anyway, I think those guys are always worthwhile. The top pass catching running back. So that's it. That's really the whole analysis. I don't think he's a phenomenal runner, but like the level of athleticism, if he can get himself in a nice rotation with a smart OC, like this could be a like boomer bust product for the NFL, like a good flex fill in, veteran best ball type of player. But I actually do think Dylan Sampson is, I don't want to say day two, but I can get on board with fourth round, possibly day two. We'll see. We'll see how the conference games go. We'll see how the rest of the conference games go. But I can't say like I'm all the way in, but like I'm a believer far more than I was preseason. That's for sure.
Let's go. Happy to have it. Happy to have you, Mike.
Absolutely. I love that you're finally giving Sampson his due. Actually, I want to ask a legit question. I'm not going to argue with you, even regardless of your answer.
Right.
Do you think Dylan Sampson's a better or worse running back than Jalen Wright?
I think he's a little worse. Yeah, worse.
Worse? Okay.
A little worse.
I'm trying to make the comparison between Wright, because obviously we've seen even some decent things from Wright just in the past couple days or whatever. And I think that everyone's really excited about Wright if he ever actually gets his shot to be the lead back and do all that kind of stuff. We haven't quite seen it yet in the NFL level, but we saw some nice things at the college level. And like I said, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm curious, because that's kind of like it's almost like it's too easy. Let's just compare the two players that were on the same team, on the same field, like that kind of thing. And I just want to know, like, how do people feel about it? Because I know how I feel about it. And honestly, I feel like they're really, really close.
I think he's really explosive, and I just don't think he has good vision though. I think his second level vision is so tough, and it's just kind of like, why are you running into people when you're so small and so fast? Like, just go somewhere else. And Jalen Wright was more of a player where I don't think he had the best vision, but he identified his lane he wanted to go, and he was going to go that direction. Like, so I think there's just a vision thing there. But that's really where the creative play caller goes, and Wright landed with the creative play caller. But like Sampson has like the athleticism. If a play caller can just be like, I need you in this spot at this moment, like, then he'll be fine.
I personally think that Dylan Sampson is the much more complete back, but what he doesn't have, he doesn't have that Jalen Wright, like top end 4.3 type of speed. But what Dylan Sampson does have is he has just this great ability to get into the end zone, even not being the biggest guy. He is just, you just can't really contain him by the goal line, which is crazy for a guy who's like 200 pounds, probably soaking wet. I don't know. Maybe he's a little bit more now.
Yeah.
Right. He's like 200, 205. Dylan Sampson is Jahmyr Gibbs like, as far as like his red zone abilities. Now, I'm not saying his overall abilities, because he's not that type of receiving back. He's bursty, but I don't think he's not that bursty. Like, he does not have all this. Like, you called out his vision there a little bit, Mike. I think that's fair. I think that there are some issues, but the big thing is that he can't be contained. They use him as a goal line back from the point he set foot on the field as a true freshman. They're like, no, we got Jabari Small, we got Jalen Wright. Nope. We got to put in Dylan Sampson. He is the guy we got to ride here. So there's just something about the way he plays, which makes me think that there's potential to be more than just that change of pace back. But yeah, so it's definitely a guy I like. You'll remember I wrote him up for campus2canton.com Devy guide this year. So obviously I'm on board with this take as well. A nice 112, huh? Good way to wrap it up.
Yeah, I really overpick, but I thought I was on this podcast. I'll give it to John a little bit here, Dylan Sampson.
I love it. I love the first round. We got Garrett Nussmeier, 101, Jalen Milroe, Caleb Johnson, Eli Holstein, Trey Harris, Xavier Restrepo, Malachi Fields, Darius Taylor, Kyle McCord, Ja'Cory Brooks, Ty Felton, and Dylan Sampson. If you don't know all of those names, just start researching them, or we'll do our best to talk about them as soon as possible, or as much as possible, so that you guys can actually know why you should be focusing on these players for upcoming drafts and things. I think the more I do this kind of stuff, talking about Devy and college and all that kind of stuff, and I know that Mike definitely focuses on what round he thinks players are going to get drafted in. And, you know, you think, oh, it doesn't really matter. This guy's going to be drafted in the 6th round. But like, sometimes that matters. Sometimes you can still get that diamond in the rough, that player. And so even if all of these players aren't going to be drafted in the 1st or 2nd round, it doesn't always matter. And like I said, we saw Jalen Wright get drafted, you know, fairly early this year. We could see a Dylan Sampson do the same thing, or Ja'Cory Brooks, or Malachi Fields, or whoever. So these are names that have risen for us and need to be on your radars. However, I would say the Fallers list is much easier, and maybe we will go 2 rounds on this one. Although, do we want to go? Actually, real quick, do we want to go with some honorable mentions for the risers, just to throw out a couple more names? I know I had a couple more. I had one that is, I guess, a capitulation. You know, I have to capitulate here and say that I was wrong about Jeremiah Love. He was probably out of my like top 50 players, top 50 running backs, and he is absolutely skyrocketed for me. I know Aaron always kind of had him high. I just couldn't do it. I felt like I feel like he's a completely different player this year than he was last year. He all of a sudden he's bursty. He has better vision. He's hitting the holes. He's doing all this stuff that he was not doing last year. And I really felt like it was just Jadarian Price was going to take over. Keydron Young was going to take over, and that has definitely not happened. So Jeremiah Love for me. Another one is Bajal Tootin. I think that he's just I don't want to say skyrocketing. I've always had him fairly high, but as far as like what you can get for an ACC running back and all that kind of stuff, like I feel like he's just doing everything we'd want to see him do. 9.2% big time run rate. Decent in the receiving game, almost three receptions per game, which is what I like to see. The PPR points per touch are well over the 1 PPR point per touch mark and all that kind of stuff. I've seen everything I want to see from Tootin. And once again, once you're in this range, it's not necessarily a player that I'm saying, oh, he's going to be a 1st round pick or anything like that. But it's those players that you should have on your radar because you can go get them. And all of a sudden, like this week, Tyron Tracy takes over the backfield and puts up 129 yards. Those are the kind of players that you need to know so that you can get those kind of games on your dynasty teams.
Bajal Tootin's pretty good pass catcher.
That's what I'm saying. He kind of has like the whole shebang. He's just an all around solid player. I don't think he's going to be drafted early or anything like that, but I think he's just a solid player.
15 receptions for 31 yards. Pretty fire. I'm just joking around. I had 2 honorable mentions myself. The one that I was thinking about like a homer pick was running back DJ Giddens. I really like DJ Giddens a lot. I already had him ranked pretty highly. I had him at 16. I moved him up to 6. Walk-on running back for Kansas State. It's just like with Genty or other players. The question has been his athleticism, but seeing how he operates in these 2 separate offensive systems with Kansas State, because they kind of switched systems once Will Howard left. He's been like a phenomenal runner, and he's already a good pass catcher. The issue is that Avery Johnson really sucks at throwing. It doesn't matter if it's long or short. Avery Johnson's just not a good thrower. But DJ Giddens, I think it's been like really showcased that like he's a really diverse running back. He can fit multiple schemes. He has the size. I think we comp him a lot to like Rashard White. So I think that's like good and bad, but I think that's like an accurate thing. I think he, for me, like one of the more easily projectable players at this time. So I have Giddens at 6. I would bet though, I would wager that I probably lower him like a handful of spots like the next couple months. But that's just because I just feel really confident about him today.
Okay.
I like it. Aaron, you got anybody for us?
Yeah, I need to pay more attention to Giddens or just rewatch, and just really hard to really slot him in. I think that there's a lot of backs that are in that range who you could interchange, at least for me. So definitely have to rewatch and pay more attention as the season goes on for Giddens. But one thing I thought was interesting was actually I wrote up an article for campuscannon.com just recently about emerging Devy players. And we actually drafted almost all of the players from that article. I didn't actually
wow.
I didn't even put it together until just now. I'm like, oh wait, I got to go back and look at this article, pull this up, and see like how we did compared to it. Eli Holstein was in there, and this was a couple weeks ago. Eli Holstein, Jeremiah Love, Dylan Sampson, Caleb Johnson, Ty Felton, and I didn't and Trey Harris. Yeah, so I
Nice.
mean we got most of them. Now, one guy I think that is worthy of shouting out is Brendan Sorsby, quarterback, Cincinnati. He was kind of successful there in Indiana, not bad, and he took to the transfer portal. And going to Cincinnati, he's been really sneakily solid this season. Like his stats are not that different than Eli Holstein's. It's just that Holstein has been that much more dynamic rusher. And I think the one thing with Sorsby is just that his rushing has been muted, but he also had an ankle sprain early in the season. That's really affected him. You finally see him starting to get healthy. What did he do this last weekend? 52 yards rushing against Texas Tech. I'm not saying that, that's not a huge number, but that's pretty solid compared to what he was doing before. And I think he has the arm talent. He has enough mobility where Sorsby, and he has the size. He has all these different things that you want to see. As a young kid, he's rising up. I think he's an honorable mention here at the very least. Very quietly solid production here this season. Don't know that he gets enough credit. So that was one guy I was going to shout out for sure.
I need to go through every once in a while. You get these players that have these like crazy outlier, like small seasons or whatever, and it messes them up in Beth. And Sorsby is one of those. He has a negative 6.17 adjusted yards per attempt in his true freshman season because he only attempted 6 passes for three completions for 8 yards, and so it completely throws off. So, but for that year, he had a negative 6 point whatever. It completely throws off their entire college career. I know I have the ability to write a formula that will get rid of all that crap. I just have to spend like a week trying to figure out what that formula is, because that's honestly what it takes. It takes about a week to figure this stuff out. And once I do, I never have to worry about it again. But I do need to actually do that because I got to get rid of like the negative 6.7 because he actually is putting up good numbers. He should be higher in Devy Beth, and I'm going to fix that after Aaron has pointed that out.
Love it. Top 30 guy for me right now amongst quarterbacks.
He's like 60th for me, but I'm very interested to see what will happen once I take away that crazy outlier part. I would imagine he would be top 30 for me as well. All right. Well, I think that is enough for the actually, you know what? Honestly, when Mike first started talking about his 12th pick, I thought he was talking about Dorian Singer. And so, I mean, obviously we can't leave this pod without talking about Dorian Singer, obvious riser for everyone except for me.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't actually rise in my ranks. I think he's honestly like right around where I had him already. But he's back to what we expected Dorian Singer to be, the stud, the wide receiver one on his own team, standing out. Honestly, that they've had some issues. The QB1 has been injured and things like that, and he's still looking damn good. So, Dorian Singer back on our radars, back in our hearts, and wide receiver one, obviously.
He's only looked good because the starter got hurt. I don't think he would have gotten there with Cam.
Honestly, I don't want to turn this into a Dorian Singer show, but we will talk. We'll talk off the air because there's I'll have to show you, but the game before Rising got hurt, it was kind of like just one of those perfect storms where things just didn't work out for Singer. You get like a really long pass interference, and then you get this and that and whatever. And next thing you know, it looks like a bad line, but it actually wasn't a bad game, like that kind of thing. But we'll talk about it up there. So
the Utah
why don't we?
Right now is Zach Wilson's little brother. You know that, right?
Yes, I did, and he looks like he's Zach Wilson's little brother. I mean, like he's not bad, he's not good. He's just kind of there. He can make some decent throws and all that, but I don't think he's ever going to be anything special by any means.
On to some stinkers.
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, we might have a good amount of followers, although we already are at the hour 10 mark. But why don't we get into our fallers? We already have the 101 from Mike earlier with the tease. Ollie Gordon, why is he falling for you? For obvious reasons.
Well, he's just terrible. But anyway, okay, so he's put on 15 pounds, right? And there's just, I always talk about like you can only put so much weight on someone's frame before they lose functional mobility. I know in like recent history, everyone immediately thinks about like Raheem Sanders. He's like the poster child for that. But like Ollie Gordon is now also a casualty of that. Now it's only 15 pounds. He's 6'2", 225. But like he's a plotter out there. I don't know. I never really thought he was that good behind the line of scrimmage. But like now, I just think he's bad at everything. Like, I think he's good in the open space. I don't think he has any burst. He has like no vision. He just looks. Not only does it look like he's regressed as an athlete, he's looked like he's regressed as a player. So I don't know. And then of course there's always the history of Mike Gundy running back. So I was always skeptical about him working out in the end, just because of how trends are. I wasn't running him off for that, but it was always in the back of my mind. So he's been terrible. I don't think he turns around this season. Maybe like next year he'll lose some weight. Maybe he'll transfer to a better program. Maybe he'll go to South Carolina, join Raheem Sanders over there. You know, they collect misfits over there in South Carolina. But he's looked. There's no juice. The juice is gone. The tank is empty.
I hate that I have to agree with you, man. I wish there was some stat or metric or something that I could point to. It says no, it's just bad luck or something. I can't do that. He has fallen 27 spots for me in my ranks, so I can't argue with you. It's just been bad. It's been night and day. Honestly, it's very Rocket Sanders-ish. Very Rocket Sanders-esque, and I don't know why these players gain the weight and like they feel like they need to for whatever reason, even though the NFL's going the complete opposite direction. The running back one in the NFL right now is Jahmyr Gibbs, and it's like, or at least for fantasy purposes, like, and yet like these guys are like, no, I want to be 250 like Derrick Henry. I'm like, no, there's one Derrick Henry, guys, like, come on. So I don't understand it.
Too, like he can carry that weight.
Yeah, so I don't understand it. Like he's lost his big playability, he's lost everything, and I don't even know what to say will fix it beyond losing the weight and possibly gaining the athleticism back.
Yeah, I mean, it's a safe pick there for sure. He's fallen a bunch, and he hasn't fallen quite that drastically for me. But I also was a little bit more skeptical in the first place of him. I still had to rank him pretty high because, I mean, there was a lot to like based on what he did last year for sure. But just always one of those guys where it didn't necessarily pass the eye test. There were always question marks, but I mean, you kind of just shrug and say, hey, he was super good last year. He should be good again this year, but nope, has not played out that way. So don't mind that pick there at 101 for the fallers. So I'm going to make, and this one hurts, but I'm going to make my pick here at 102. And Jackson Arnold, quarterback, Oklahoma, is the 102 of the fallers. He is just, and maybe they pulled the plug too early. That game was just terrible when he got benched for their freshman quarterback. And you know what? You can blame the offensive line. You can blame the wide receivers, and there are great arguments to do so. So there's still potential for a future for him in college football, and a solid enough future, sure. But at the end of the day, I mean, with all those excuses, there was still talent there, man. And he just did not look good at all, making poor decisions, missing guys. He's a mobile quarterback, and at least he was doing some things with his legs. But just to lose the job and lose all your confidence, he's fallen off a ton. So, and he was a top type of quarterback in most ranks. So, I mean, for a top 5-ish type of guy to be a borderline top 20 or so quarterback in college football now. And I mean, that's top 20 is still generous, right? That's assuming that's looking long-term, because this season, no, his value immediately has cratered. His long-term value, I still think there's some insulation. Jackson Arnold, just a huge faller for this season though.
Yeah,
I'm a big trends guy. I think that's kind of actually where I started too. I know a lot of people like analytics, and I kind of like that more into like trends rather than analytics. Just because like I don't want to look at a pool of players and be like, yeah, there's 50 guys here that I can look into. I'd rather just follow trends. I don't know. more than one quarterback that had to transfer, like, lost a starting job, transferred out, and became dead irrelevant. Like, there's only one guy for that. I think we were talking about in the Slack today, in the company Slack, but it's like one of those things where, like, transfer portal is really cool for CFF reasons. For Devy reasons, it's like not always like the best, especially if you like have to transfer down. Like, I know you guys talked about Jacory Brooks.
Jackson Dart.
For, like, a riser.
Jackson Dart's probably the only one that we can really like say is relevant right now, right?
I don't think he transferred down though. I think it's a lateral thing. Like
James
Jordan transferred from Ohio State to Alabama. Like, that was more of a lateral transfer.
Yeah.
But God, who was the one we talked about in the Slack today? Do you remember?
Jalen Hurts, was it? Or
Jalen Hurts, yeah, from Alabama, lost a job in Alabama, went to Oklahoma.
Yeah. No, and that's very valid, right? The sample size is really low, but I think that we've seen enough, and there's a high enough pedigree type of guy where there's potential. He's kind of like an Eli Holstein. If Eli Holstein got an opportunity last season, I would think that he probably struggled a little bit at Alabama, and probably. I mean, that doesn't change that he's a good player. Sometimes your confidence gets shaken if you get thrown in too early. Thankfully, that didn't happen for Eli Holstein. He was able to wait a year, go to Pitt, very friendly system, and now he's blowing up. So it can happen, but at the same time, like you're pointing out there, Mike, once that guy's confidence is kind of gone, he has to transfer out. There's that sour taste in all of our mouths. It's hard to rebound, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this just goes back to what I always say, with the research that I've done, that these QBs all suck. And like there's like one that ends up mattering out of every class.
Yeah.
And it's just like we fall in love. CFF players, C2C players, Devy players, we all fall in love with these QBs and they all suck. And then we go, well, what happened? Why does my team suck for the past 3 years? Well, you keep taking the freaking QBs, man. Come on. So, yeah, maybe just chill with the QBs, go draft a running back or two, make a couple trades, and, let's play C2C better. How about that? Let's just do that. So, all right. So Aaron made his pick. That was a good one. Honestly, I can't really say that I even had him as a faller because I was honestly pretty low already on Arnold. He didn't do anything amazing in year one, and yet people kind of just forgave it, and I completely get it because we've seen it happen where that guy just a true freshman comes in, doesn't necessarily look amazing, and then year two they kind of take a giant step forward. So I get forgiving it. Debbie Beth doesn't work. Debbie Beth is a unforgiving, you know what, and so she does not mess around. And I did not have him ranked very highly to begin with. I obviously do not have him ranked very highly now. So I don't necessarily even know that he was a true faller, but I absolutely understand why he is on this list because going from starting, top 5 quarterback and all that to not is pretty wild.
For sure. And it makes sense why maybe in there he's not falling that much because like you said, it's not like he's doing drastically worse than he was last season. It's just that they pulled the plug. Like he was just looking lost out there. And he still has just about a 60% completion percentage. He still has a 7-3 touchdown to interception ratio. It's just the other things that he was not doing well, right? It's the fumbles. It's just not converting on key plays, just not being able to hit guys in the right situations to set them up for success. So hopefully it'll happen somewhere else. He's not dead, but not good.
Yeah, I tend to agree. So this one is pretty easy for me. And it's kind of crazy because I feel like it's a roller coaster with this player. I've gone up and down with them and I've been on every side of the emotion roller coaster, and it's Carson Beck. I felt like I was not in love with him, but I said he's a player of interest last year. I drafted him in the 3rd round of our supplemental draft, in one of our supplemental drafts, Aaron. And I just said, hey man, like this guy has something and he's the starter. So, I'm going to go ahead and draft him. Everything was pretty good last year, but I started looking at the numbers during the off season and I'm like, you know what? This is not what I love to see from my QB, especially a 5th-year QB. Like if he was a 2nd-year Eli Holstein-ish kind of guy or whatever, sure, maybe I can forgive a thing or two. But we start talking about a 5th-year senior, and I'm like, this is not necessarily what I want to see. And so I tried to sell him. I only have the one share, that I drafted in the 3rd round. I started trying to sell them. I don't know if you guys are in C2C leagues or not, but it's difficult. People just don't want to make trades. And even if they do, like they don't know how to value players at all. They're like, oh, I'll give you a 18th round. And it's like, okay, great. Thanks, guys. So I did not sell him. He's still on my team, and he just keeps falling. Everything has looked pretty bad. Obviously, everyone watched the Bama game. He looked absolutely terrible. He did kind of come back around, but everything's the same this year. It's a low big time throw rate, a low intended air yards. It's all the stuff that I don't like out of my quarterbacks. He honestly looks like a very good backup quarterback to me. A backup quarterback in the NFL. That's what he looks like he's going to end up being. Now we see those guys have value and Gardner Minshew and players like that. Like they can still have value and they can still go out and win you games and even have value in trades and things like that. So it's not like all's lost with Carson Beck. But my thinking is that he is never going to be a stud QB in the NFL or stud QB for my fantasy teams. And I wish I'd tried a little harder to sell that one share.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think the concerns were there. Give you guys credit there, Mike, over at some of the C2C podcasts, highlighting some of those concerns with him just being a little bit more of a game manager and safe. He was safe. That's why he was ranked highly, consensus, in the industry. But sometimes that safety just isn't going to get it done unless they take that next step forward. And he obviously has not, despite having some good weapons there. So, definitely a candidate. He wasn't, I guess I wasn't even really thinking him, at least not this early, because I didn't think he was that bad this season, but he's definitely fallen. There's no doubt I've had to move him down.
I want to say he's at least fallen 6 spots for me, if not more. He's my QB 11 now overall. And
he is still QB1 for me.
Wow.
I still have him top 10 as well.
QB1 overall, obviously including all, Arch Manning and including all classes.
Arch
as far as the class.
Yeah. So Arch is at 2. Nico looked terrible against Arkansas, so I put him back down at 3. And then yeah, sorry. Hey, this class was exciting. This quarterback class is exciting. But when I think about it, it's still really up in the air. And Cam Ward's super late to all these throws. Jalen Milroe looks great sometimes and looks terrible other times. Quinn Ewers is we've seen Quinn Ewers for 3 years. So he looks really fire for week 2 at 2 year, and it's questionable the rest of the year. Dylan Raiola really promising. Drew Otter's getting his feels back. I don't know, dude. Carson Beck is still safe, but he certainly doesn't look as good as he did last year. This whole class, this whole class is frustrating. I hope there's some more clarity in the games.
It is, but that's why I was saying with Herms earlier. It's you don't have to draft these guys early because they're not all gonna people are gonna fall out of love with them.
Yeah.
But you might still get a Carson Beck. Let's say the NFL falls out of love with them, and they probably should. But you might get a Carson Beck in the 3rd round of your rookie draft or something like that when it's all said and done. And then later on you have a backup quarterback that can go get you starts and things like that. That a year ago we were saying, oh, he might be the 101 in our rookie drafts.
Yeah, and what I love about college football now, this era of the NIL and the transfer portal era, I think super teams are done. While I was in Europe, I rewatched, not by choice, it was on TV, but I rewatched the 2018 championship between Alabama and Georgia, and all the names on there were just mental flashbangs. I'm like, man, did Alabama really have Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, Calvin Ridley, and then the quarterback room had 3 first rounders on there. It's just that would never happen in today's NFL. If you had 20 studs on a roster, 5 of those kids are going to go chase a bag somewhere else. They're going to go. So, watching these games the last 2 weeks, I was the line for Georgia, not what it used to be the last 2 decades, and I was the pass catchers, not that great either. I don't know. So Carson Beck isn't I guess elevating the offense the way I like and the way I talk about quarterbacks. I want to see quarterbacks that have subpar pieces around them and then they lift them up to be better than what they actually are. And I thought Carson Beck did that last year. This year, it's he's more playing to his level of supporting cast, and that's not really encouraging. But Like that's kind of that's like why I really like Garrett Nussmeier, for example. I like Drake May last year. Like those teams, Garrett Nussmeier's throwing to Kyron Lacy, who drops the ball all the time. Anyway, the quarterback class is frustrating, but I love college football. I love it.
And that's a fair call on Lacey and some of the LSU wide receivers. Like they're not the typical LSU wide receivers. So I guess we do have to give Nuss a little bit of credit there as far as dealing with. John's like, no, but he does not. There's no Jefferson out there. There's no Jamar Chase. There's no Malik Neighbors. There's no Brian Thomas Jr. It's just fallen off so much. But still, I guess some talent. It's LSU, right? But I will say, I'll pose one question for you when you're making these rankings here, or just kind of struggling with who should be that number one guy. Do you want a guy with the upside of Jalen Milroe, Mike, or like who could really break fantasy football at the next level? Or do you want like Arch Manning, who's just so refined? It's just, you got to wait a little while, but he's set up for success there at Texas. Versus a safe guy like Jackson Dart. And that's what's, really had to force me to move, or sorry, not Jackson Dart, Carson Beck. We're talking Carson Beck here, for anybody who just got confused by me. But I just think that the safety of a Beck, I have to move him down for that reason, though, only because of the upside of a Jalen Milroe or Arch Manning, for example.
I guess I just don't see the rate. Arch Manning is still a projection. We've seen him play like a terrible Texas Tech team, and then I don't remember who he came in for the 2 games, but they're also terrible teams where he had plenty of time to throw the ball. Arch is at 2 for me until I can see him prove it. I just can't fathom putting a projection at number 1 overall. That's why I had to stop him at 2. I was like, I think he's still just so much of a projection. I still believe. I really do believe him. I wholeheartedly believe in him. I would draft him first round of a CSC startup. I really would. And then chasing the ceiling, I don't know. I hate quarterback evaluation lately. I really do. I think I just want the first round tag, and then I can trade him in the offseason for someone that's better. Bo Nix's value was ridiculous this offseason, and Michael Penix was getting drafted too high. You can't trade Michael Penix today for a second round rookie pick. You can't trade Bo Nix today for a first round rookie pick where he was getting drafted. And we're only 5 games into the season. So, I'd probably just take Carson Beck. If I really thought he was going to get drafted somewhere in the first, maybe not top 5, maybe not even QB1 overall, I would probably take Carson Beck today if I thought he was a first round.
Luckily, if you were listening to the Devy Devotional, which you obviously do, you were not drafting Bo Nix in the first and or Michael Penix in the second. we were extremely low on both those players, even once they got first round draft capital. And we weren't the only ones, but we were definitely one of the few saying, hey, just because the draft capital is there doesn't mean that you go draft these players. They were not good in college. They're not. And that's kind of what I'm talking about with Beck here. I'm kind of saying the same thing. I get that Beck has excitement. I get that he even has draft capital talks and all that kind of stuff. I just don't see it being for fantasy purposes. I don't see Carson Beck being the stud or anything that's going to help your team. I see him being a NFL backup, probably at best, or a very bad starter at best. And I just don't want those kind of players on my team. I will let somebody else draft them, or I will try my best to trade them. And Herm says, Bo Nix, more like no Nix. And I tend to agree. But I have another pick here, and we probably should go a little quicker here in the followers draft. We're already at the hour 30 mark. We do appreciate you guys listening. If you still are, we have quite a few people here, so we'll see. I have a player. This one is, people aren't going to be ready for this one, even though if they've listened to our podcast, they should be. Luther Burden is an absolute faller. And yeah, see, Mike's not ready. Aaron is giving me this. That's the spicy meets a ball. If you don't think that Luther Burden has fallen this year, you have not paid attention to Luther Burden's season. You haven't paid attention to Luther Burden's half a season, second half of the season last year, and then the entire season so far this year, where he is just literally the epitome of meh. He's the epitome of, okay, I'm a decent player in college. I will never be anything in the NFL. And yet people still have him ranked as their wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. He's not in my he's not in my top 5. You got to get him out of your top 5. You got to get him out of your top 10. There's no reason why Luther Burden should still be considered a top wide receiver in the 2025 class. And I will sit here and listen to any arguments for why He will, but no one can give me a single argument besides, oh, he was really good for 6 weeks at the beginning of the year when they weren't playing anyone last year.
Mike, do you want to take this or no? Because I don't necessarily disagree that there are other guys that are more deserving for being in those top couple of spots. We have some very intriguing freshmen who, they have to slot in ahead because their upside, their promise has been that much more bright than Luther Burden's. So absolutely.
I'm talking about top 5 in the draft class. I'm not even talking
I mean,
about with freshmen.
Oh yeah, I know you're really dropping him here, and I get it to a degree. I mean, Theo Weiss, should not be matching you, right? that should not be happening. I can't completely excuse it. There has to be some skepticism. He was never like the safest type of asset to roster as far as a wide receiver prospect, but he has always been that playmaker with the ball in his hands, similar to Debo. I maintain that comp. I think that they're somewhat similar players at that next level. If he gets deployed in the right system, sure, he might be a little bit more system dependent, but I've just always used the Debo comp. I still feel just fine about it because he's not necessarily this consistent separator down the field. He's not the most nuanced route runner down the field, but he's great when you get him the ball around the goal line, when you get intermediate screen passes, short passes, just get the ball into his hands, and he's big enough and physical enough to do something with it. And he's got great speed. So, I mean, there are things that you have to question about maybe his nuanced route running, all those types of things that have always been maybe that issue with him. It's just that all these other things are so promising and tantalizing with his profile. But maybe Mike can make some further points to favor him, or maybe, I mean, Luther Burden might be moving for you too, Mike. I don't know.
No, I've been holding steady on Luther. I think I lowered him one spot, and that's really it. I think his skill set type is mostly yak, short area type stuff. He's very physical too. The route running isn't like top tier, but it's like in the good enough category. You compliment like Debo. I usually compliment actually more like DJ Moore. But
DJ Moore's actually good at football though. That's the problem.
Oh, okay. I mean, Luther's pretty good too. He had 1,200 yards last year.
Yeah, and tell that to Theo Weiss.
Dude, I don't know what's going on with Theo. But anyway, and Brady Cook looks terrible, by the way. I know you guys are like secret fans over here of Brady Cook as well, but I feel like we could talk to him as a dropper as well. But like, I've only watched one game in Missouri, and it was this past weekend, and because I was kind of like, what is going on with Missouri? And I still don't understand why they're falling off. Like, I don't get it. But no, I don't think this changed Luther the player. Luther the player has not changed here at all for me.
Yeah, no, I totally get the like on the surface why the DJ Moore comp is interesting, because DJ Moore was never like this 18, 19 yards per reception type of guy. Like, he was used in that intermediate to short pass role, and he was great with screens. He's great underneath, and he's developed into that much better of a wide receiver at the NFL level all over the field. So I get the play style type of comparison there. It's just DJ Moore just dominated to a different level within the context of his offense, really separating from the other guys there, kind of doubling up, anybody who was there as far as production. And we just haven't really seen Luther Burden quite separate. So I know I'm trying to defend him here, but that's why I'm kind of the middleman with him. Like, I still like him, but there's definitely reason for concern. So I don't mind that selection there. Are we good to go on with 105 here, or do we have any parting shots for Luther Burden?
No, I think he's Curtis Samuel without all that pesky talent.
This could be one of those Tank Bigsby takes where it's like, right now it's looking good for quite a while, it is, but then Tank, look at what he did this last week, and it's like, there's that little.
If we're gonna use 1 week after a year and a half, yeah, who won that battle? Yeah, talk to me last season, guys.
I'm just saying that one of those guys who can pop at the next level. I'm not saying just one game, but
how long have we talked? And I know we're going off a tangent, and we shouldn't. But how long have we talked about Luther Burden's the wide receiver one in all of college football? Like, come on, guys! Like, we've been arguing this for years.
First off, this is only his year 3. Year
Well,
one
yeah,
wasn't
but
a more
it was
flawless
all of
NBA test.
last year. People are like, oh well, Tet's garbage. He's 6'4". He can never possibly be good. And
That was
so
early freshman year talk. That was early freshman year talk.
so we're gonna put Luther Burden as our wide receiver one, and then never drop him, even though he doesn't actually look like a wide receiver
I
one.
will
But
concede to 2 or even to 5 actually at this point. But
okay, drop him to 10, and then we'll talk. Aaron, you are up at the 105.
Okay. Yes. At 105, I am struggling with a couple players. There's two guys. One of them I don't think is going to last, but I'm going to go with the one who I think has dropped the most, and that's Zachariah Branch, USC wide receiver. Um,
wow.
yeah, he
That's
was
a
a
good
guy who
pick.
was, like borderline top 6. I mean, probably not in that like top 3 type of guy, but like top 6, top 7 guy for a lot of folks. And I understand it. The upside was there. The big playability coming out of high school was just super intriguing, and he's just not capitalized at all on that this season. And I do have to say, Lincoln Riley, he just keeps messing up with these types of guys. Like, I don't even know why he recruits him, because he just always messes. Like, what was it? Was it Mario Williams or whoever that was, like 1 or 2 years ago? Like,
Yeah, Mark
yes,
Williams.
yeah, same type of thing. And he just doesn't really know how to get the most out of them. Little pop passes, screens, this and that. Zachariah Branch, he's involved this year. It's not like he hasn't done anything, but he hasn't taken that step forward, and he doesn't have the size that a Luther Burden type of guy has. Like, to hit Zachariah Branch has to be really, really elite, I'll say. I mean, he has to be basically an elite athlete to make it work with that type of a skill set, where he's just this almost gadgety guy at this point. He hasn't proven ability to win down the field at all, and he doesn't really show that he has quite that elite speed. So I just have a lot of concerns right now for Zachariah Branch at USC. He's my faller.
I usually like my underside wide receivers to be just like you said, like elite athletes. The only two that really been kind of like breaking that is Tank Dell, the doubter, and then I'm still a really big Josh Downs fan, but I had to lower him towards the end of athletic testing. But like otherwise, like when I see like a recruit coming in like 5'9", like 170, I'm like, I need that guy to be Jalen Waddle like so bad for me to believe in him. And even so, it's like last year my co-host and I, Corey, were always talking about like, his freshman year looks a lot like Barian Brown. Like, are we gonna see Barian Brown again from this guy, where it's just all athlete and no development? So I'm with you on this one. I was going to get cute on my next one and say all 3 USC wide receivers. So I was going to include Zachariah Branch on my pick. So I don't know. I guess I'll probably do that here and just say the other 2 USC wide receivers are probably just going to push them together. Mekhi Lemon is like 40 overall for me. Mekhi Lemon had the like prototypical NFL like size / ability like to see. Like, he's 6', 190. He runs routes. He's a great athlete. He was hardly used his freshman year. There was like injury rumors, but phenomenal spring, kind of revived life into him. He got hurt again this year, so maybe it's like a little bit unfair to call him a faller right now, but whatever. And then there's Deuce Robinson, who was legitimately a baseball athlete, and like people were like, he might go to the draft. They didn't get drafted, and then the baseball season comes, and this dude plays 2 games out of the first 35 games. He only plays 2. And it's just like, get that shit, give it up and go focus on football, earn yourself some money, because you're not doing it through baseball, clearly. So they've just been rotating these guys, very minimal touches, ball spread out, but it's like, I'm generalizing here, but it's like 2 catches for 30 yards for each of these guys every single game. So I kind of like lowered all of them, including Zachariah Branch, all the USC wide receivers for me, except for Jacoby Lane, because I didn't have him ranked, so he actually went up a little bit, but everybody else fell.
You
Yeah,
don't
I
have to
like
talk to me about Branch. I mean, I was one of probably the biggest doubters of Branch going into the season. I made a pretty bold take about Jordan Tyson being better than him or ranked better than him by the end of the season. And I'll tell you what, that's actually looking like a pretty good take right now. Jordan Tyson's actually, making waves over there, scoring 2 tutties and all kinds of stuff this past week. And I think he had a big game like the week prior before they had a bye.
Yeah, he did.
So not looking too bad.
The one defense I want to say for Branch is that his ADOT has been expanded the last 3 weeks. So they've started using him a little bit more downfield. It hasn't looked good, but at least we're seeing him be used downfield a little bit more. wanted to give him that silver lining.
I do appreciate that. I mean, as a player, I want to see that. So I mean, I have no qualms with Zachariah Branch. I don't hate him or anything like that. Like I would love for him to succeed. The way that they used him last year, bringing in Miller Moss, doing all that, like I just never saw it working out, and it hasn't worked out. So, and the same thing with Lemon and all that. But who do you have at 107?
I had one. I really did. Let me say.
Or do you want to just use Mekhi Lemon and Deuce Robinson as your?
I have like a huge list of running backs I can go to, so it's very easy for me to pick from.
Okay, because I have Mekhi Lemon as your technical 106. So
I will be cheesing it one more time and saying any running back over the 240 pounds. So that includes Roderick Robinson and Caleb Jackson.
Ooh. I feel like Roderick Robinson is unfair. So I'm gonna give you Caleb Jackson here because
that's fair.
Caleb Jackson is actually fallen. Like Roderick Robinson's just hurt. Like that's not fair.
Right. Other people have passed him up, but he hasn't like actually tanked his stock at all. Well, I mean, I guess you could say like the best availability is, or the best ability is availability. Whatever.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Okay. Fine. I'll talk about. Well, now I'm gonna talk about them both. There's just no reason to be 240 pounds in today's NFL. Like the whole like just power running back, like straightforward. Like we don't do that anymore. We just don't. Like, I think that skill set is still necessary in the NFL, but you can find a guy mid day 3 that does that. You know, like an Audrey Gaston from Notre Dame. That guy's slow as bricks and he sucks, right, John? And then I'm just playing with anyway. But anyway,
he's about to be a stud.
Maybe give him an extra year like Tank Bigsby. But Caleb Jackson, though. Anyway, he put on this weight. LSU posted online. They put it on Twitter. Here's the before and after photo, and they're like proud of it. And like they do this type of stuff, and it's just like, are you creating bodybuilders? Or are you trying to create athletes? Because bodybuilders don't like move that fast, you know. Like it's just clear like he's lost juice, and I kind of hate it. And just like Raheem Sanders, I'm sitting here like, please lose weight. I want to see that wiggle again. I want to see that burst because you just look slow and easy to tackle. You look like a rock out there. So
100%. I honestly, the only reason why I have not mentioned Caleb Jackson yet is because he moved so far down my ranks that I kind of forgot about him. And I was so high on Caleb Jackson going into the offseason that it hurts a lot, but it's the absolute right call. I mean, he's one of the top fallers. Like I said, I probably would have taken him maybe even over Carson Beck and waited on Beck or something, just because he fell so hard for me, or for everyone. I mean, he gained that weight. Like you said, I don't know why these players are gaining this weight and then they lose everything, and I just don't quite get it.
I mean, it's easy to be bulky. You're just, you know, I guess it's not that hard in college. You have access to all this, you know, great food and this and that. And if you just don't quite maintain quite enough, you're just not lean enough, basically. You're not quite getting enough workouts in, quite the intensity that you need to, and discipline. You're away from home, you're away from family or structure, or partying or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of temptations out there. So definitely a red flag whenever you see guys hitting that 240-pound mark in the off season. There's no doubt.
Why were you staring at me the entire time you were saying that? I don't really appreciate that, Aaron.
I wasn't trying to. My screen, my split screen is on the very left side. So if it looks like it's you, I'm looking at Mike just as much as you. So
all right, who you got? A 108.
Oh man. Sorry, just 1 second here. No, this one kind of hurts, but I think I gotta I'll go Evan Stewart here. Evan Stewart, Oregon wide receiver. He's not even fallen that far, but when you're a top 5 type of guy and you're falling now maybe outside of the top 10, that's a big fallout, especially since we know that there's some question marks at the very top end of wide receivers in Devy after the first or top few guys. Yeah, I mean, there's been no, I shouldn't say that there's been no optimism out of there, because there's been some splash plays for Evan Stewart at Oregon, but since he's transferred in, he has not consistently dominated in targets. That's been Tez Johnson still, and I love Tez. I anticipated him to be a huge part of the offense too this season, but Evan has just not really done what he's needed to do. And he hasn't really broken the big plays and hasn't really gelled. And I get it. It takes time with the new quarterback, but Tez is on the same page right away. And there's some holdover there, coaching staff and system wise. I get why Tez is having a more seamless transition. But I mean, when you're as good as Evan Stewart is, they should be scheming you the ball. They should be throwing you like talent earns targets, right? It's just not being earned right now. There's just so much raw talent there and ability. And I think he's more of a refined type of guy than a Luther Burden. So there's certainly optimism that we should still have for Evan Stewart, but at this point, I have to consider him a faller.
I still believe in the talent. I haven't dropped my rankings because of that reason, although I really do agree with everything Aaron just said. I do, though, want to say that Jalen Gabriel is a short area passer that goes to a system that likes to pass like short area balls, and I think Tez just fits it better than Evan Stewart, although I was definitely on the side of people saying that Evan Stewart's talent gap between him and Tez Johnson, between him and Tez is just so big that he should garner more targets, and that just isn't going to happen. But like I've seen Evan Stewart just be elite as an individual talent that I'm almost excited now as a dynasty player because I'm foaming at the mouth from like getting like this could be really good value, like like this could be a really good value in my rookie drafts. But I haven't personally lowered him, but I do think it's the right call to lower him. And honestly, like just like hot take, like he might be a top receiver in the 2026 class. He might just take another year.
Possibly. I'm not even necessarily comping the players, but it's kind of hard to not look at Troy Franklin and look at like what all happened with him, where everyone thought he was like one of the top players in college, and then next thing you know, he's a 4th round draft pick in the NFL draft, and I wonder if it might end up being the same thing with Evan Stewart. So I like him as a follower pick here. He has just not done what we expected him to do, but like you said, like Mike said, I mean that system. I feel like Dylan Gabriel's a better quarterback than what the system is pushing out right now. And it's just little dinks and dunks to Tez Johnson and Jordan James and whoever else. And I don't want to hate on the system because it seems to work. But at the same time, I always thought of Dylan Gabriel as a pretty decent quarterback at the very least. And right now he's looking pretty poor. So I don't love that. But we should probably move on to my next pick. And I'm glad. I kind of forgot. I was switching pages and doing all that, and I forgot who I was going to take here. And then I just looked at it again, and I was like, oh my God, this is the most obvious pick. How did I not take him earlier? And it's Quinn Ewers. I think that people are going to give Ewers a pass for, oh, he got hurt, and he missed a couple weeks. Well, no big deal, blah, blah, blah. Quinn Ewers has been like objectively bad in all of the games that he's played this year. Now, he has an extremely good team around him. He has an extremely good supporting cast around him. So it doesn't really show up in the box score. It doesn't show up, in the actual score. Oh, they scored 30 points. Well, yeah, Jaden Blue had this, and he threw a couple, short passes to this guy or that guy, whatever. Quinn Ewers is sitting at a 7.3 intended air yards over the past 2 years, a 3.8% big time throw rate. Like, that is Bo Nix level. So think about how you feel about Bo Nix right now, and then go ahead and just transfer that over to Quinn Ewers, because that's how you should feel about Quinn Ewers. However, you don't feel that way about Quinn Ewers because people have told you, no, Ewers is really, really good. He's at Texas. He's a top pick. He's going to be a top pick in the NFL draft, and blah, blah, blah. He, once again, going back to a Carson Beck, he's the epitome of a backup NFL quarterback. Trade Quinn Ewers if you have him. Drop Quinn Ewers if you have them. I want nothing to do with them. I will not, and I still stand by the fact that I think he will get benched at some point. Unfortunately, the injury, I never wanted to, I will never victory lap an injury. So, I'm not saying he got benched or anything because he obviously got hurt. But, and that has delayed said benching. But at some point, they're going to realize that Arch Manning is actually better in the same exact games that Quinn Ewers and Arch have played together, Arch Manning had better numbers, and he's a better quarterback than Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers is a faller for me at 109. What do you guys think?
I don't think he's really fallen that much. I mean, I
Yeah.
just don't know that he's done quite enough to be like, this is a huge faller because he's been banged up. We said earlier you can't really drop Robinson for Georgia because he's been injured. It's kind of that same thing. And I'm not saying that Quinn Ewers, he's played this season, so at least he has that, but I don't think he's blown up his stock or anything like that. He could finish the season really strong with a contending team that could go to the national championship. There's still a very good route for him. So saying that, you should drop him or anything like that, I know that's a little hyperbole, but I get the idea of trading him if you don't believe in him. And I'm not saying I'm a stark believer either, but I haven't moved him down that much in my ranks. It's just some other guys have passed him a little bit.
I get the argument of once again, he was hurt and all that kind of stuff. Before he was hurt, they did not have the most difficult competition or anything like that. But just looking at his 2023 to 2024 numbers,
like a top defense. That's like he coached Michigan.
Okay, that's fine. 2023 PPR points per touch 1.02. 2024 0.48. Split it in half, right? Big time throw rate 3.9% in 2023, 3.7% in 2024. Intended air yards 8.4 in 23, 6.2 in 24. His yards are coming down. He's actually getting worse every game that he plays, and yet we're gonna sit here and talk about how he's still a top quarterback. I can't do it anymore. I just can't. He's out of my top 5. I want nothing to do with him. He's an NFL backup, and somebody else can draft him.
NFL guys talk about him a lot as a first rounder because, well, actually a lot of the same reasons they talked about Bo Nix. Anyway, like he's safe with the ball. He doesn't make bad decisions and he's safe with the ball. He doesn't take sacks, doesn't throw picks, like he's safe. So I don't know. I'm not like disagreeing with John that he's not going to work out in the NFL because I'm very big on like projecting success. Like it's more than just draft capital. But I think Quinn still has a lot of life left in his value.
That's fair. And I still have another pick here. So I will talk about
Did not.
No, Otta hasn't really fallen for me. That was another one that got hurt. So he hasn't really fallen for me. But you know what? I started coming around on Gavin Sawchuk before the start of the season.
Yeah.
And I was wrong. I should not have come around on him because he is. I mean, he's just fallen off the face of the planet. I mean, he got passed up by a true freshman, although extremely good true freshman. Probably the best running back in the class. He's gotten passed up by other players on his team. I saw big playability from him, albeit, at a very small stature and everything. So I never necessarily thought he was this NFL stud or anything, but I thought that he could at least score points on the college side, and he's not even doing that. So I think that Gavin Sawchuk has to be an extreme faller because, he literally went from a guy that was scoring points for you on CFF to just an absolute nobody that you'll probably never hear from again unless he drops down to North Texas or something like that.
Yeah. No.
Huge faller. Enough said. Easy enough one. No resistance here. That's for sure. He was so bad that all of us are like, yeah, he's trash.
Yeah, he's just bad. All right, Aaron, who you got at 111?
Okay. Well, a guy who's maybe not quite as trash, but he has fallen. He has not looked the same. Damian Martinez transferring from Oregon State to Miami. Guy that John and I both like. I mean, to be honest, most people out there probably like Damian Martinez to some degree. It's not like very rarely was I ever hearing people are like, he's super trash, this or that. At least people thought he was a solid back. And he has just looked solid is probably generous this season. It's not that he's been bad either, but it's been uninspiring. He has not separated amongst the other backs there at Miami. And I will say that Fletcher, solid. Lyle, solid. Lyle has some really nice big playability. Fletcher is just very solid. Guy with some power, some goal line ability, all that. And Damian Martinez coming into that system. I don't know if it's just maybe it's a new style of offense or whatnot to play behind. I guess I don't really know enough about his struggles to see if it's just more of a scheme fit or if it's more of a player issue, or maybe he's just playing at that higher level of competition now and he's just not cutting it. Sometimes that's what happens when you try to transfer up and you just aren't quite athletic enough to make that jump. So Damian Martinez stock down a little bit here as a faller. Hurts me to take him here, considered some other guys, but I just think he fits the bill.
I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I can't disagree with you. The only thing I will say is that he did look a little bit better this past week. But it's 1 week, so I can't disagree that he's absolutely fallen. I was talking about him being a top 5 guy in the class before the start of the season, and I don't even have him top 5 in the class right now. So he's an absolute faller. So I like it. I like the call. I don't like it. I like the call. All right, and that brings you up, Mike, at the 112 to finish up our fallers draft. I'm sure we'll have some honorable mentions because, like I said, I had a much larger fallers list than I did the risers list. So we'll talk about some players, even though we're sitting here talking for a bit, but that's what we do. It's okay.
I think we've picked on the running backs enough, and there's certainly more names to talk about in the running back room. Man, I'll go with I'll go with tight end. I'll just go with Ben Urosek, Georgia tight end, or even Oscar Delp, honestly. But
that's a good call.
I don't know if people like Oscar Delp, but I was definitely on the crowd of like Ben Urosek was a phenomenal passing tight end from Stanford. His second year breakout was just beautiful, chef's kiss, and then like year 3, 4 was like really slow and just terrible football play overall at Stanford. Finally gets out to go to Georgia, and you're like, yeah, this makes sense. There's no like number 1 target there at all. It's wide open. He has to finish his Stanford operates in semesters, so he wasn't there, in quarters, so he wasn't there in the spring because he had to finish up his whatever quarter for Stanford. And like he's not even touching the field. Like he gets like a handful of snaps and he gets like nothing else. So Urosek for me was a top 3 or 4 tight end. And then quickly after like week 2, I was like, get him out of here. He's done. Get him out. Tight end, don't care. Get him out. So I went with Ben Urosek there. Although I felt like there's like maybe 5 or 6 better running backs to talk about, but that's fine.
Yeah, like you said, we've been picking on the running backs a little bit. I definitely don't mind it. There were some people that were really hyped about Urosek transferring over to Georgia and everything that came along with it, and it's just not worked out. So I don't mind it at all. We don't normally talk about tight ends here, but it's not a bad call at all.
We get Mike on the podcast. We actually mentioned some tight ends, and it's funny because I had 2 guys on my list, 2 tight ends, and Ben Urosek actually was not one of them. I had 2 other fallers that I thought were a little bit, maybe a bigger profile to some degree, because Ben Urosek, one of those safe guys, but you don't really know how the transfer is going to go. So, I actually thought that Luke Lachey, from Iowa, he's been kind of a faller. Now, I think that traits wise, he'll translate just fine. So I don't think the world, like for example, Urosek, that's a huge fall. Like, I mean, he's just done nothing, and that's taking his stock. Luke Lachey, I mean, he's hurting his stock, but I still think that there's a solid future there. And same thing for Luke Haas. I always guess how to say Luke Haas, but out of Arkansas there, I mean, he's just really done nothing. And I don't know if it's some residual injury effects or whatnot going on there. He's got time to turn it around. It's only his 2nd year in college, but no doubt a guy who's lost some value at this point in time. So 2 tight ends there. I could have picked more. It's like the NFL right now. Like, how the NFL is really struggling with their tight end production this season. College football is kind of like that outside of a couple of the top guys. If you got Harold Fannin, Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland, you're kind of loving life. Otherwise, Aronde Gadsden, I suppose, for CFF type of deal. Otherwise, you're kind of hurting right now.
Even Gadsden was bad for a couple of weeks before this past week, where he kind of came back onto our radars. I think he had like 29 points or something, but he had like a combined 3 points over the last 2 weeks before that. So it was like, what's going on here?
Yeah, I almost want to put Lawson Lucky as one of the risers, the Georgia tight end that actually has been
That's
working out. I
top
almost
5
want
guy
to,
for me right now. I
I
have him
moved
at
him up to
5.
4. Yeah, moved up to 4.
Nice.
As far as other fallers for honorable mentions, I'm probably just gonna roll through mine real quick. Abu Sama, like I don't know what happened to him, but now he's in the post hype sleeper category. I'll revisit him in 6 months, but I'm not watching him anymore. Like it's done.
Yeah, he's
Um,
rough.
Not the follower for me. I never liked his running style, so even though he's hurt, the lack of usage, I just decided to finally cut him down. Keyshawn Allen, I've always known he's not a good athlete. I don't know why I had him as high as I did. That was really weird to me. So he dropped down. Raheem Sanders, the comeback is just not coming back. It's done. Cameron Seldon. This is probably I should have wrote this. I should have talked about him with Dylan Sampson. The reason why I wasn't so high on Dylan Sampson, which John knows, but more for listeners here. Cam Seldon's like an all-world athlete and had like all this vertical size and pass catching background. And the whole question was like, well, Tennessee runs this split system. Like, I just want to see is Cam Seldon like the 1A and Sampson's the 1B because he just fits a more like traditional like size slash role. And then he had his surgery on his shoulder, and I was like, I guess I'll just never find out. I'll just never find out. And then obviously, season starts and it's still in Sampson. It's just like, it's fine. I'll throw in the towel on Cameron Seldon. So he dropped. LeQuint's not a good runner. I dropped him. I think that runs it up on my running backs. I always hated Donovan Edwards, so I just want to put that out there again. He still sucks. Everyone that thought he was good, he still sucks.
He definitely does still suck. It's the wildest thing. His what was it, 5 games or something like that when Blake Corum got hurt in 2 years ago were just some of the trickiest games that you've ever seen in your entire life because next thing you know, everyone thinks that Donovan Edwards is the best running back that's ever happened, and then he just goes out and never ever looks, except for the championship game when it matters most. All of a sudden he's a stud again, but any other time, complete garbage. I will completely admit that I fell for the Donovan Edwards hype, and it did not work out. Some honorable mention fallers for me. I'm going with obviously Rocket Sanders. Like if you don't know about Rocket Sanders, go look at his stats. Just look at his you don't even have to look at advanced stats. Just look at his normal stats, and you'll see why he is a faller for me. And then Trayon Webb. From Florida, I really fell in love with him in a small sample size from Florida, for thinking he was going to be the next guy, like the next ETN who's going to like split carries with Montrell Johnson and just be the more efficient back, and that has definitely not worked out. He seems to not have the big playability that maybe I thought he had. That's the problem with small sample sizes, people. That's why we don't fall in love with them. Squirrel White has to be mentioned as somebody who's fallen off. Mike and I talked about him a few weeks ago, but I wonder if it's a Nico thing, because Nico I might actually be a faller for me. Honestly, people absolutely fell in love with him, a la Jackson Arnold, a la, everyone else in the class and everything, but he's not pushing the ball down the field. Nico I has if I can get to it, 8.6 intended air yards, 4.6% big time throw rate. He's not pushing the ball down the field. He's not making these huge plays or anything like that. And we're seeing that with Squirrel White. He's just not. Joe Milton is not a good quarterback, and yet he was able to make better things happen with Squirrel White than Nico I is. And so he has to be a faller, but I don't know that I necessarily blame Squirrel as much on that falling. And then Jacoby George is another one that I had talked about earlier that I didn't actually mention, but I said, hey, when we were talking about Xavier Restrepo, I was like, I really like Jacoby George, and I wanted him to be a thing. And it's not like he's had a terrible year, but he has definitely not had a solid year or a great year or anything like that. So I think he's had to fall for me. Although, I don't even think he was ranked for most people. So he's probably not a faller for most. But Aaron and I were pretty not high on him, but higher than most on him. And so I think he has to be a faller for me. And just like hey, I was wrong. I'm okay admitting I was wrong.
Yeah, and I know you have to get going here, Mike, but I'll just throw out the names and we can elaborate later, right? Argue about these things. But Kyron Jones, little drop for sure. Jonte Cook, Texas wide receiver, just has not necessarily emerged. Not that he's looked bad. It's just that he hasn't really proven that he's that next guy up.
Yeah,
But he could be. Yeah, Barron Brown too. You mentioned him earlier, Mike. Definitely a guy who is just has not put it together. The offense, you have to take that into consideration. That always has to be some context, but yeah. I won't elaborate anymore.
All right. Well, that's enough. We're over the 2-hour mark. Mike's got to get out of here. We appreciate all the honorable mentions and the draft. We will put out a graphic, and you guys will have to vote on who won each draft, and we'll figure that out here in the next week or so. We do appreciate you coming on to the pod, kind of last minute even, Mike. And why don't you? The listeners should know who you are at this point, but why don't you go ahead and tell them who you are anyway?
Yeah, I'm one of the Devy team leads at Campus Toucan. It's a company specializes in college football content. A lot of fancy football content over there. Has a tons of tools, and is a contributor there. Devy Guy is probably our number one project. But yeah, you can find all my work there. I'm starting to get back to being active on Twitter, posting up film cut-ups and stuff. But you guys can find me on Twitter at @FF_DirtyMike. Getting into memes a lot lately. So anyway.
And I will admit, he normally sounds better on his own podcast.
Yes.
Tonight has been a little rough with the microphone, but this is not the norm. So just it's okay.
I do apologize for the quality of this. We had technical difficulties, and that's why I'm running late now.
He normally sounds a lot better. That's one of my pet peeves as a multi-podcast listener. I listen to so many pods, and when the audio is messed up, I absolutely hate it. But I completely understand being in the background on this one and everything. It wasn't for lack of trying or anything like that.
Better on your podcast than mine, John.
Absolutely. That's what they always say. Aaron, do you have any words of wisdom for us before we get out of here?
Yes, well, risers and fallers can be very difficult to identify. The fallers are always very, very sad, but we have to react, once we start getting a solid sample size. So at this point in the season, we do have to react one way or another. There are folks who are slower to react than us. Maybe we could take advantage of that if you're trying to trade in your leagues. Maybe take advantage of some of these situations. So hopefully we gave you some good insight into that tonight.
I completely agree. Like Aaron said, trade Luther Burden right now. He's absolute garbage, and he should not be in your top 5, just like Aaron just said. We appreciate you guys listening. It's been a lot of fun, well over the 2-hour mark. If you're still listening, we really do appreciate you. But for now, we're going to go ahead and cash out. See ya next time.